Welcome back to another episode of Disney Unpacked. It's me, Len Testa, and on today's show, we're going to talk about why Mater matters. Mater matters. Two M's close together like that. I forget, is that alliteration or assonance?
Alliteration, Len. The Oxford English Dictionary defines alliteration as the occurrence of the same letter of sound at the beginning of adjacent or closely connected words.
Ooh, but you know what else makes use of alliteration? The name Junkyard Jamboree.
What a coincidence, Jim. That's the attraction we're talking about today, right? You, me, Mr. Jim Hill, we were all out at Disney California Adventure earlier this year, and we all saw Junkyard Jamboree together. In fact, we spent quite a bit of time looking at your handiwork, right?
We did. And what's really great about Mater's Junkyard Jamboree, well, it's kind of like as if Disneyland's Mad Tea Party and the Dumbo the Flying Elephant ride had a baby.
That is the Disney Parks video I do not want to see, Jim Hill.
Well, you know what maybe Jim Hill is trying to say in his own special way is that Mater's Junkyard Jamboree, well, it kind of mixes the spinning kinetics of the Mad Tea Party in with the character-based fun of Dumbo.
Okay, but instead of flying inside of a hollow elephant, you're being pulled around by a tractor that looks like it's part cow.
But what I really like about Mater's Junkyard Jamboree is that it's that rarest of rare ride, an attraction that's as much fun to watch while it's in motion as it is to actually ride.
You know, it's been a while now. In fact, it's been over a decade. But after a decade, I've got to admit, I'm still pretty pleased with the way Junkyard Jamboree turned out.
I mean, that whole area of DCA is filled with great stuff. All the attractions are good. All of the scenery is good. Even the restaurant is good.
I'm glad to hear you say that because, like, look, there are people who, will tell you Pandora, the World of Avatar, and Animal Kingdom, or the two Star Wars Galaxy's Edges are the thing when it comes to taking a world that you've seen in a film and making it real. But for me, it's Cars Land at California Adventure.
It kind of is. It kind of is.
Yeah. I mean, again, you can walk through it. You can touch things. You can experience it.
Yeah.
There's honestly nothing else like it on the planet with that much detail.
Oh, my heart. Oh, the whole Cars team is going to be blushing to hear all your kind words. But you might want to pause for a moment because you need to take a closer look at some of the images that are on the screen. Look in the background there. What do you see?
It's Aladdin's lamp?
Aladdin's lamp. He wins. They can be taught.
Is it really?
Yeah, absolutely. Totally. Why would I lie? Because it was cloned. That particular ride was cloned for the Disney Studios park in Paris. It was actually an opening day attraction at that park's second gate when that park opened to guests in March of 2003.
There's a Cars Land in Disneyland Paris?
Well, not exactly a Cars Land, but Cars was represented. I mean, not too long ago, the entire Studio Tram Tour ride was rethemed around the Cars film franchise.
Oh, yeah. The Cars road trip thing that opened in France back in June of 2021.
Yes, but before Road Trip, there was another Cars ride, and I'm going to talk about that one. I'm going to talk about the very first Cars project, the Cars Crotte Rally. Pardon my French. But this was a small flat ride that was added to the Disney Studios park, way back in June 2007. And that was about 3 years after the studio park opened to guests. I believe that without the lessons learned while creating that little flat ride, that the Cars Land at DCA would never have turned out as well as it ultimately did.
Really? So the Cars Land in the studios was sort of like the Maginot Line, the thing that we tried, it failed, but we learned something from it.
Well, maybe not a military analogy, but, it's more like, being off Broadway. It was something that we could try and test. And if it failed, well, it's over there. You don't really know it ever happened. But another way to look at it is, well, if I'm going to be completely honest, I guess I need to mention that the road that leads to Mater's Junkyard Jamboree, it doesn't even begin in France, not in 2007. It actually begins more than 100 years ago at Coney Island in New York.
All right. Let's hit the brakes for a second, Shull. It sounds like this episode of Disney Unpacked just started. Aaron, would you please fire up the show's title sequence?
What can you tell me about the whip?
Like the Devo song, Whip It Good. Dun-dun-dun-dun.
I like it too. I have that. I had a hat from a concert.
Yeah, right. The little like inverted
Yeah,
dog
the
bowl
little
thing.
dog
Yeah,
thing,
exactly. Yeah.
Oh, okay. This show goes in strange and interesting corners. But no, your answer is wrong. Hill, do you have a hat or an answer?
To be honest, I'm more of a Dole Whip guy myself, though. Wait a minute. Okay, the Whip. There's something about that name. Is this where Coney Island comes into today's story?
You're exactly right. And the whip we're talking about here was a ride that Mr. William F. Mangles designed and built for Coney Island more than 100 years ago.
Okay, hold on a second, Shull. You're telling me the guy who built this ride, his last name is Mangles. So Billy Mangles was his.
Oh.
Yeah, you want to be there for a school role. Mr. Billy Mangles.
Is it a last name or is it a verb?
There we go.
I'm going to have to get back to you about that, But what's important here, guys, is the whip was hugely popular. It was a really great ride. It suddenly became a standard in what was then a new industry, the amusement park industry. And suddenly all the other parks all around the country, they all started dialing Mr. Mangles up saying, can I get one of your rides? Let's look at this image for a moment. You can see that the whip, well, it even made its way all the way out to Long Beach, California to be installed at the famous Pike.
What is the name of the ride next to the Whip? Am I reading that right? The Crazy House Slides?
Jim, everything about the California housing market right now is crazy. But looking at this looks like a pretty straightforward ride mechanism, right?
Well, we wish it was anything but simple. What we're looking at is a hybrid mechanism, and it combined a motor connected to a chain with open links connected to a steel rod to a spring to dampen the swing. This was primitive would be a kind term. But it did get a U.S. patent for Mr. Mangles.
Really, Mangles got a patent for the whip?
Yep, he got one in 1914.
This to me looks like one of those things where the mechanism could have come from like a 1901 International Harvester Combine, but then they just put scaffolding around the mechanism.
Yeah, let's say, what are the parts that we have left over? What's
exactly
the wheat? You're not using that wheat thresher, Billy, are you?
No, it was one of those things. Well, Billy's lost both arms. We can't use the thresher anymore. What are we going to do with this? Let's make it into an amusement park ride. Anyway, all right, Shull. How did this thing work?
Good question. Well, as the ride car traveled around the end of a oval-shaped course, but by the way, it was metal, which meant it was a little loud. The vehicle that you were in, it would pick up speed. It had a lap bar and no other restraint. So when you went to the outside of the loop, it would suddenly use centrifugal force and would whip you to the outside. So whoever was riding in the vehicle would be smashing into one another as they went and whipped around the corners.
This explains so much about Grandma's hip replacement.
Oh.
I mean, it sounds like for the time it would have been a fun ride.
Would have been. Well, hang on. There was a whip that was built in 1918 that, Len, is still in operation today at Dorney Park in Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Does it still look like this?
I went there. Yeah, I went there and I went and rode it and it looks like that.
Does Pennsylvania not have amusement park lawyers?
We can all agree that the whip was fun to watch. But the exposed mechanism, it wasn't exactly magical, shall we say?
Okay, so what you're saying here is if you're going to work with this, you didn't want the guests to see how the attraction was actually powered?
Well, we didn't want to see the power system. We wanted to have the magic of Disney applying to this. And so, that was one of the ideas. But also the other idea was, let's face it, this was patented in 1914, and that's a long time ago. Plus, cables snap, chains break, they fly around when they do that, turning to shrapnel. Not a good thing. So the version of the whip that I was thinking about would be driven by a gear mechanism that would be unseen completely by guests. It would be behind a floor that you were riding on, meaning it would be safe. And in addition, I wanted a version of the whip that would allow guests to both whip to the left and to the right.
All right, so keep the fun stuff and ditch the let's get killed part.
Yeah, that was, Len, we want to keep you just the way you are.
All your fingers and all your toes. So
Yeah.
And I was rewarded for what I did, along with, of course, other engineers at WDI. I was awarded a patent for my work on Mater's Junkyard Jamboree.
Oh, so you and Mr. Mangles have something in common.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, I guess we're both patent holders.
Yeah, that's it.
was the placement of this ride at the entrance of that land deliberate or what? Just a happy accident?
Okay. Well, we didn't have happy little trees. What we had was had choices, in fact. And that's because Cars Land, when they planned it, it went into a piece of property at DCA that was kind of not easy to get to. So as a result, they had to have three, not one, but three entrances into Cars Land.
Oh, God, you're right.
Of course I'm right. I'm a patent holder, guys. Guess we're going to be able to enter Cars Land through one of three entrances. They could enter through Grizzly Peak, they could enter through Flick's Fun Fair, or finally they could enter through Pacific Wharf.
This sounds like door choices on Let's Make a Deal. Okay, but instead of the three doors, you've got three possible entrances. Why did you pick where you picked for Mater's Junkyard Jamboree?
Well, it went behind door number one, and the decision was really driven by the process of elimination. We finally went down our list of things that we could do and ended up with what was left over. Because, when they were developing the big ride, the Radiator Springs Racers ride, it was really evident really fast that was going to be the ride that was going to take up most of Carland. And that's because there's a big show building, there's a big racetrack, there's a big queue, there's a lot of stuff that's big. So that ride had to be far back in the land as possible.
Okay, but you've still got unclaimed land towards the front of both sides, right?
Yeah, we had some of the land, but not as much land as you think, because the latest Flying Tires ride was dictated by the film. And in the film, we know that ride is in the center of the town.
Yeah, what is it? The intersection of Route 66, and I think they call it Cross Street.
You're right. And following the layout of Radiator Springs, we know from that film that Mater's Junkyard is located far on the outskirts of the town.
Oh, so you followed a map?
Yes, which is a man my wife never lets me forget.
That image doesn't look so remote with that big building next to Mater's Junkyard, though.
Well, Len, there's a reason for that, because that building wasn't originally part of Cars Land. It predated Cars Land, in fact. It just so happens to be the cast commissary at DCA, and it was their opening day.
This sounds like a deja vu in France, but say what?
What? Well, say what is that the cast members get hungry, and DCA had a cast commissary to feed them. The commissary was located backstage between, Bountiful Valley Farm and the Pacific Wharf. Just after you have a margarita, then you go and have a burrito, I guess was the idea.
That makes complete sense. That explains a lot of DCA 1.0.
Well, it's your food groups, Len. It's all about your food groups.
It's exactly. Burritos and margaritas make up two of the four food groups.
Yes. We'll talk about candy in the next episode. But the point is, the commissary was there before anything else was there. So, now we're faced with, we're going to build a Cars Land, and there's a big old commissary right in the middle of our plot of land. What are we going to do?
I have an easy answer, and that is, let's just move the commissary.
Oh, wish that we could, Len. It was a big honking building. It was already connected to things that you don't really think about. It was connected to the sewer system. In Anaheim, it was connected to the electrical grid. There were potties there. And more to the point, we wanted to spend money on the stuff people would like and notice and care about, not on building a new commissary.
All right. Valid point. Because Jim, Shull, you and I have talked about this on previous shows, but moving electrical and water is just a huge hassle, and nobody wants to spend their money on that. Okay.
But what gets me is I've walked by this building dozens of times when I've been in DC. I've never noticed it before.
Yeah, no idea. No idea it was there.
No,
Yeah.
that's because the guys did an excellent job. It got the do-over of all do-overs in order to hide there in plain sight. If you look at the front of it, you'll see that the Association Hall now sits on Route 66 right next to Mater's Junkyard Jamboree.
That's some amazing camouflage.
Yeah, and we know that Mater lives right next to it in his junkyard, in a shack. However, to fit into our new land, Mater's shack had to be a fixer-upper.
Oh, because Disneyland has high standards when it comes to the junkyards it'll allow in the borders.
Len, are you making a homeowners association joke now?
I'm just pointing out that Cars Land is in California, headquarters of covenants and codes and restrictions.
Since Mater's garage in DCA was now going to be different from the film, so what'd you wind up using for your inspiration?
My dad lived on an avocado ranch as a young man, and he wanted to be a photographer. And so my grandfather, having plenty of land, well, he built for my dad a darkroom. And it was this little bare bones shack, which just so happened to kind of be a good stepping off point for the shack I had to design for Mater's in his junkyard at DCA.
All right, so we've established that for Cars Land at DCA, you're going to build an updated version of the Whip, and the ride was going to be inside Mater's junkyard at the edge of Radiator Springs. That's where we're at so far.
Yep,
okay.
that's as far as we've gotten on this road journey.
Let me just pause here. I'm going to go update the Wikipedia page one day for Mater's Junkyard Jamboree, and I'm going to say, the guy that designed this, Jim Shull, designed it on the building on the shed, darkroom shed that his grandfather had built for his dad on the avocado farm that he grew up in. And that update, I'm going to say right now, is going to get rejected by every single one of the Wikipedia editors for being completely implausible. I'm just going on the record right now as saying no one is going to believe this story that we're telling right now. Just saying. Go ahead.
Well, if you're going to do that, just add the fact that, there were Haas and Anaheim avocados that were grown on my grandfather's ranch. See if that gets you anything.
Fine, yeah.
At the end of the show, guacamole for everyone.
And Mickey's Toontown is based on his mother-in-law. But, footnote. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's as far as we got. So anyway, I explored a couple of options on, how much junk could this junkyard fit? And after a little sketching time, I settled on the perfect volume of jammed-in junk that those teeny tiny tractors would drive on by.
Oh, so we've established now that you're a theme park slumlord.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah.
What's next what's the next step in this design process, Jim?
Well, as a slumlord, you have certain obligations and, things you can do. So I applied a lesson that I learned from Disney Studios Paris on that first Cars ride. I applied the lesson that I could get big value by personalizing each of the ride vehicles, in this case our tractors, with different paint jobs and individualized windshield eye stickers. That was the lesson that I could apply to the tiny tractors.
Oh, you pointed this out when we were together looking at the ride. That is a super clever way of making an identical set of vehicles unique.
Well, it was cheap and cheerful, shall we say. Oh, wait, and I almost forgot. The next time you're in Cars Land, be sure to check out the mouth shape on the front of each of the tractors, because each of the mouths are different in the design.
Are there Cars fans who actually do that? Trying to catalog each of the individual tractors in the Mater ride fleet?
I'm sure that there are somewhere, but, there are other things they can do with their time, such as if they want to go and have their photo capture in front of a tractor. Well, for those people, we create a photo op just for them, just outside of Junkyard Jamboree. It's there that they can pose for photos.
Okay, even though, Jim Shull, it's got to be satisfying to have something that you started with an off-the-shelf ride from Zamperla that's led to the creation of a ride system that is now in 4 different Disney theme parks around the world, and each one of them is actually different characters for each different ride, right?
Wait a minute. I just remembered something from my high school Latin class. Doesn't Mater mean mother?
Oh, you're getting deep. you're getting deep here. Well, hold on. You're getting deep here, Hill. Hold on. So, all right. So, Mater's Junkyard Jamboree's family tree extends to the other 3 attractions at Disney parks around the world.
But I'm just saying, if we follow the logic, doesn't that then make Mr. Shull the father of this attraction?
And Mater is the mother because he has the patent.
There we go.
Guys, didn't you get the check this month? Let's not go down that road. There are things that we keep in silence. Can we talk about something other than the pedigree of Mater and his parentage?
Are you denying this attraction's parentage?
Hill, I didn't say anything while we were together, but you kind of look at the eyes that Mater has. They kind of look like Shull's.
In fact, they are Shull's. He brought them over in a suitcase.
Just okay.
They're just kind of branches of my family tree. We keep in the closet.
Jim Shull, the other thing I remember most about being at DCA and walking through it with you and Jim was the stories that you told us about Pixar Pier, and I kind of wish we had more time for that.
Ooh, there's always time. In fact, we'll make time in the next show, Len, because on that show, the very next episode of Disney Unpacked, we're going to be telling the stories of Paradise Pier 1, Paradise Pier 2, and the entire history of Pixar Pier.
All right, until then, this is Len Testa for Jim Hill and Jim Shull. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next episode.
Jim Hill here. If you've been enjoying Disney Unpacked on YouTube, be sure and head on over to Patreon and join our community. Not only will you receive the entire Jim Hill Media suite of podcasts ad-free, but you'll also get bonus episodes of the Disney Dish and, more importantly, the full episodes of Disney Unpacked with more stories from Jim Shull, Len Testa, and I. By joining our Patreon, you are helping us continue to evolve our entertainment offerings and are part of the team. We can't wait to show you some of the other ideas we've been working on. And if you haven't yet, be sure and subscribe to Disney Unpacked on YouTube. Thanks for watching and supporting the team at Jim Hill Media and Disney Unpacked.